Today's podcast sponsor is Huber Engineered Woods, and I want to talk to you about zip sheathing and why we use zip sheathing. I know you've heard me talk about it on the podcast before, but I thought let's just lay it out in the simplest of forms. Number one, when I install it properly, I tape the seams, I liquid flash the seams, I manage for water with my windows. I use their products. I don't have to worry about water. There are times when we install drywall inside of a house and we don't have cladding on the outside because I know zip system is going to be waterproof. So that's number one. Number two, I can manage for air. So using zip system sheathing on the walls, my last 5 houses we built were all below passive house levels of air leakage. They were all below that 0.6 ACH50. And we're not putting that much effort into air sealing. We're just making sure that we tape well, which we manage for water, we manage for air. And the last 5 houses that I built all had zip R, because that continuous insulation that comes adhered to the back of my zip sheathing that I'm already putting up and installing, now I have continuous R value that I get the whole R6 or the R9 or R12, whatever it is. I don't see building any other way. It works for us. It can work for you. Make sure you go to huberwood.com and check them out. And Huber, thanks for sponsoring the podcast.
Hey there, everybody. This is Pete Yost hosting the Unbuild It podcast. I've got my 2 good buddies here, as usual. Steve
They can't, if they're listening, they can't see who you're pointing at. You could have just kept going.
Architect, and Jake Bruton, builder. And this week we're talking about doors. We're talking about entry and exit from buildings. And so there's a lot to cover here, and we're going to dive right in. So let's talk about entry and exit ways for buildings. Jake?
I was going to see if he said somebody's name to try to push it off on them. Yes, Peter, go ahead.
Well, so it's not easy. They're more complicated than windows because people walk through them and on the thresholds. They certainly are tougher to install. And we ask quite a bit of our doors in terms of performance. But I'm really interested in, Steve, first of all, starting with design. How do you decide where to put doors and how many to put them in a house for your clients?
Well, I always put the doors near the entryway.
That's good. That was a good one.
Exit way. There's usually one attached to the garage and house.
He uses them to connect spaces. You know, the architect's answer.
First of all, it's really interesting. We have this diehard love of a front door, even though our culture has, in a lot of cases, have seemed to abandon its use.
Yeah.
But I've actually tried a couple times to design a house without the front door, and it's a challenge because the mind hurdle of we need a front door. We need something that represents the front door. And to eliminate it makes the house feel like it is missing something. So
interesting.
That's a real challenge mentally. But, where you place the front door, I mean, certainly it's, house style, lot. There's all kinds of things that are tying into that.
Is it the only door? I mean, it's the only door that takes precedence from a design standpoint as a focal point, right? The back door just is where the back door needs to be, generally.
And it's a delicate balance, right? Because you want it to be a focal point, and then you see some of these houses where, they may spend $50,000 on the front door and front entryway, and damn well nobody's ever walking 60 feet down that walkway from the driveway to go in the front door. And, they have a secondary mudroom entrance or something 12 feet down the walkway. So people are going to, skirt that and go in that front door. So it's always one of those things that, if you're in a project with a budget, that how much money do we throw at the front door? And because of that reason, I can put $50,000 there and use up a good chunk of budget, or I can make that front entryway $20,000 and put the $30,000 somewhere where I'm going to use it every day. So that's, a little delicate balance. And that's the aesthetics. There's also the idea of how well is that front door protected. And you would think that let's make it really protected, but if you make it really protected, then you have places where, people can hide or this or that. But might be
people can hide?
Well, security issues and stuff like that. But there's a delicate balance there too, as to how deep, how big is that entryway? Is it covered? Does it go out over the basement, or does the foundation wall contour to the front entryway? In the cases where it doesn't, that always seems to be a real challenge, because now I'm putting this kind of shower pan of a floor system over my basement that is going to see weather.
Which for some reason is super common, or especially was in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah, I would certainly choose to contour the foundation wall to match it. And
you mean to keep the inside in and the outside out? Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
So there's that part of it. And then the actual door choice is always a decision, right? And a lot of times for me, that's based on how well the door is protected. So if we have a door that's kind of out in the open, then maybe we want to move towards a fiberglass door system or something like that, where putting a wood door out there, it's going to be challenged with backsplash off the stairway and just rain and weather, that if you're, the front door is 6 foot recessed on a front porch, then yeah, maybe that beautiful fir door is a great choice then, but maybe not in the colonial where it's not covered.
It's always been curious to me that in commercial buildings, of course, the doors have to open out because it's part of egress requirements. But we don't have anything like that. How do you two guys decide whether to make a door in swing or out swing exterior?
So first of all, the opening out thing, this guy laughed at me more than once when we were in Switzerland because I went to push on a door to leave a building and it was not an outswing door. And it was just like, it was kind of the whole mentality of everything that we saw there. It kind of just came into this, like, health and safety was secondary to you're an adult, act like an adult. Like, there were no railings along that river and everything, where it was just like, oh, we're treating people as if they can take care of themselves. But I completely understand the outswing on a commercial building. Like, it makes perfect sense, and I'm sure it saved lives. It just was weird that when we were there, it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, on a commercial building, what you're trying to protect against is 100 people rushing towards the door in case of fire.
100 unfamiliar
and you can't
people.
Open the door.
Push up against the door, and you can't open the door now.
Yeah. And they're unfamiliar with the space.
And they're unfamiliar. Yeah.
So, but you said, hold on, I don't want to talk about.
So the choice of in-swing or outswing. In-swing doors are easier to waterproof, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. The way that they seat with weather stripping in traditional American construction, I should say, it's just a little easier than trying to put the unit outboard of the weather stripping and then expect that the water is going to shed at the weather stripping instead of the other way around.
Yeah, it's got to be a pretty rare condition to put an outswing door. I can name a couple, but it's very rare. The times I've used it is probably off like a dining room or family room onto a screened-in porch or something like that.
And that's because of the issues that Jake described?
Because we didn't really want to, we didn't have the floor space to
in-swing
with furniture and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Into the space where the screen and porch had a little bit more floor area, so we swung the doors out.
And it was covered.
But your default is for it to in-swing because it's easier to...
Yeah, for those reasons.
Yeah.
Which the American manufacturers also default to that too. Like you cannot buy, in our market, you cannot buy an outswing exterior door without special ordering it.
Yeah. It's like shower doors too. You see a lot of places they put outswing doors on, but you put outswing doors on, you swing it out, and then all the water drips on all over the floor.
Yeah, yeah.
An in-swing door in the shower, so when you open it, you're draining the door into the shower.
All of ours swing both ways.
Of course they do.
Yeah, we're better. We give you more options.
So how else do you decide about which type of door or its performance? How do you decide whether it's half light, full light, or no light at all?
It's a balancing act, right? It's a balance of aesthetics and performance and budget.
Yeah, the performance is probably the least one on that list because, like we talked about before, the door is a blip on the radar screen for surface area. So we can take a little bit of a performance hit there. I'm not saying we do single glazed windows, but, a double glazed window, whether it's a 70-30 split on glass to wood or a 50-50 split, I don't think it really makes a difference in the energy report at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if we're looking at a house that has triple glazed windows in it, those triple glazed doors from Europe, they're pretty proud of those suckers.
They are. The problem, and it's not a problem, it's just we find that you're adjusting those a little bit more often.
Huh. Yeah.
Those doors are very, very heavy.
And they have more adjustments to begin with. So they have more little finicky.
You put them on those hinges, and you got to remember, if it is a front door that you're using all the time, the durability aspect from operational use is something to be really concerned about because you are opening and closing it all the time. So,
not if it's your front door.
Well, if you are, the key is to design the front door to be used.
Yeah,
that's the key.
I'm incredibly impressed with how much our front door gets used at our house too. But in reality, it's because there are 5 kids within 2 years of age of my 9-year-old that just come up to our house 3 or 4 times a day sometimes. And then the front door and the back door are only about 15 feet from each other. So it's in the front door, slam, out the back door, slam. And it's like, I'm glad that we really planned that because then they don't really track through the rest of the house.
It's interesting when I've done, blower door tests or thermal imaging on passive house doors, it's really interesting how much is related to the lock set in terms of, conductive heat loss, but even sometimes air leakage, because getting the gaskets just right when that's where the closing mechanism is not easy.
Yeah.
What about non-hinge doors?
Like sliders?
Like sliders, or when you do sliders, how much of it has to be operable if you're doing a really big set of floor-to-ceiling glass?
Yeah, I mean, when you're using the European style, which I use quite often, one of the issues you have to take into account is that at some point you're going to get a real heavy door, right? Mm-hmm. If I take a 16-foot slider and I break it into, say, a 4-foot panel and a 12-foot fixed panel, and the 4-foot panel is the operable, that 4-foot panel is still probably, 400 or 500 pounds. So with the lift and slide hardware, it's really not a problem. But if I took that 16-footer and cut it in half and went 50-50 at an 8-footer, I'd be in a 900-pound range, and you'd have to put some weight. Even with the lift and slide, you'd have to put some weight behind it.
Yeah. So the 5-foot sliding panel at my house, I think, is like 390 pounds or something like that. It's just under 400. My 6-year-old moves it without any problems.
Yeah. No, it's great hardware. And the other thing you have to realize is, is there really a difference between a 4-foot opening and a 6-foot opening?
No.
Like, what can I do in the 4-foot opening or 6-foot opening that I can't do in the 4-foot opening? Maybe bring
dirt
a
bike,
bigger Christmas tree.
Dirt bike.
4-wheeler, sorry, quad.
Bring a bigger Christmas tree in.
Don't tell my wife that. I'm glad that she doesn't listen to this.
Christmas trees size is an issue.
We had 3 Christmas trees this year.
How we tried to get a snowmobile into this Christmas living room. Anyways,
to pull in the Christmas tree.
Yeah. I mean, that would be. I say that because I've had conversations about the Christmas tree in front doors that would blow you
nonstop.
That we have to talk about that stuff, but we do anyway. But yeah, the lift and slide, and people are always, I want this as open as possible, and so I've done multi-slide systems where you have 3-4 panels that all converge onto the final panel, and they're very pricey doors. I tell clients, I get clients in the Northeast that say, look at this door. And I'm like, yeah, look at it. It's Tucson, San Diego, or Phoenix is probably where, or somewhere in Texas. is probably where that picture was taken.
And up here in Boston, you get 7 days a year that you're going to want that sucker open.
And, the other 53, you're cleaning out the track because it's filled with crap and stuff that's bogging it down. And those doors are extremely sensitive, too. Like, you put in those folding door systems.
I was going to ask you about the folding door system.
There's that many more moving parts. We're just talking about a single swing door being...
I'm talking sensitive in a sense that not only are you buying a door, so a good folding door is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2,000 a linear foot.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
So they're not cheap. And that's a good one. There's people out there going, oh my God, Steve's retarded. We can find a door for $1,200 for a 20-footer. Yeah, you can, and you're not going to open it year two.
Yeah,
because it's jammed shut. I'm talking about a real reputable
initially folding
system. But the problem is that your structural system above it has to increase
that much crazier.
Threefold, because those doors do not tolerate any deflection.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go from, in some cases we did a project where, I think it was about a 12-foot opening multi-slide door, and our LVLs went from like 3 9.5 inch to 3 14 or 16 inch LVLs. Just because we couldn't, and it's the strength, but it's the creep over time, the sagging, of the beam that you have to account for, that they are just so sensitive you can't have any movement.
And from a energy efficiency and air sealing standpoint, you're just amplifying the amount of weather stripping and the amount of moving parts to try to get to seal well. And it's just they're not built for comfort. They're built for photos on house.
I mean, when I do them, I have done them in the Northeast, and when we do them, typically we put those on like the screen-in porch or something, and then the door from the screen-in porch to the house is a nice European triple glazed lift and slide door.
So super protected.
So the one that's out there is, they're expensive doors, but they're not. There's not an energy efficient concern.
It leaks to a 3-season room and not to a house.
Exactly. So.
And just in terms of installation, we have talked about this before, about how hard it is to get the air seal across the sill, connecting the pan to the bottom of the door. That, you got to be really careful about that, because unlike a window, that's a really tough seal to...
There's a great company in Somerville, I'll toss it out there. I think it's Architectural Openings, and the guy's name will come to me, but... He has a really cool rule. He builds some of the most amazing door systems I've ever seen, if not the most amazing. And it's not uncommon for him to do a $250,000-$300,000 door system.
Wow!
But it's like a 60-foot wall of glass on a penthouse in New York that he builds and puts up there. But I've actually priced a couple systems out with him, and he's in that $2,000, $2,500 a foot range for the normal stuff. But one of his rules is if I build it, I install it.
Interesting. Yeah.
He says, I don't let anybody touch my stuff, because I'm not going to come back and have to figure out.
I'm not going to warranty what they hosed up.
Yeah, well, and it's just, he goes, it'll take me hours to try and figure out like what's not right.
That's really interesting.
I'll put it in right, and it will operate perfect before I leave.
Yeah.
So
then that air sealing conversation and the bottom of the unit, that's why I like lift and slides. Because when that hardware cams, the door actually sits down on weather stripping, rather than it just having like that little broom weather stripping underneath it that like a regular sliding patio door would have.
Yeah.
And so you get a U shape at the top of weather stripping that seals outside and inside, that the door can ride up and down inside. Weather stripping on the sides doesn't change from a patio door. You're either yammed up against the seal, the jam, or you have that C-lock where they tuck in together. The only thing that's different is that lift motion that pops it up and down. And the doors at my personal house, when we installed them, my wife was like, right after we moved in, she was like, there's cold air coming in over here. And I was like, dang it. Like, we spent a ton of money on these doors. We put them in. We paid really close attention. Like, in-house carpentry put them in, not our framer or anything like that. And I spent like 30 minutes over there, like fiddling and looking at it and trying to figure out how it might adjust. And then I was like, oh, it's leaking in underneath the jamb. It's not the door. It was an install issue. So then we had
you completed that air seal.
We completed that air seal on the interior. We just had a gap in it that I wasn't seeing.
Huh.
And that was it. And I was just like, okay, now we have the comfortable door that we thought we were going to have.
Nice. So you guys know this. My pet peeve related to doors is a single lock system. So at the lock set, that's the only thing that holds the door against the gasketing. And the physics of it just, you can't take something that's monolithic, that's 7 to 8 feet tall, and expect one point of contact to compress, because the door does flex.
At least they put it in the middle.
Yeah, right. But where do they leak? They leak at the top, opposite the hinge side, and the bottom. And that's because it's only being pulled at one point over a 7 to 8 foot distance.
So how do you fix that?
Triple point hardware is, you have to pull it close in 3 locations rather than just one. But the interesting thing is, I was talking to a client about this, and he turned to me in an email and said, I wonder how much they're different if it's a solid door compared to half light or full light. And every single door I tested at my house, I wrote a blog about this, it's a half light door, which means that, in addition to it being expecting that whole door, it's not the whole door. For half the door, it's this 4-inch slice.
Yeah.
And so I think that makes a big difference too, that it's not just a single panel, it's a pretty complicated panel.
Style.
Yeah. Style, stand, rails, run.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that in a door it was called the style because it's to the edge of the door.
It is. So we have triple point latching doors on the front and back entrance.
I don't think you can get, it's certainly a talking point, but I think we've moved beyond the single point locking system for the majority of doors.
Yeah, but
you can find them in projects you go to visit from old projects, but I'm saying buying new.
There's a big section of the world that still gets them every day. Yeah. Well, all the masonite, every steel entry door, almost all fiberglass entry doors.
This client was
Therma-Tru has it as an option.
Yeah.
Well, not only an option, but for this guy, it doubled the price of the door.
Yeah.
It was a $1,400 door, and the triple point was a $1,400 option.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
That costs money.
Yeah.
They do.
I didn't realize it cost that much money.
How long?
So it's perspective, right? It's like the door is not a $1,400 door. The door is a $2,800 door that you can cheapen to $1,400 if you want to be a bozo.
That's your perspective. Yeah, that's
Right?
good. Yeah.
So it's the front door is a $2,800 door, not a $1,400 door that has the option to be more expensive.
Steve, once again, I learn something from you every day. I'm going to write that back to the client and say, you've mistaken a $1,400 door. Yeah, that's good. I like that.
It's a $2,800 door, not a $1,400 door.
So for pizza resource,
wait,
are we there? No.
What about pivot doors?
Oh yeah. So what about pivot doors, Jake?
So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the pivot door, the hinge is not at the. Sorry, I keep putting my hand up in between Pete and his camera, and
he tells me the only thing that matters is me, but it bugs the heck out of me.
The hinge is the door doesn't have a hanging hinge. It is mounted, a third of the way in, or a fourth of the way in on the slab,
which seems like a cool idea.
And they're architecturally pretty interesting.
Yeah,
but they are absolutely garbage when it comes to air sealing, because you're asking for weather stripping on both sides of the door now, and there to be a point where it transitions from one side of the door to the other side of the door, and that weather stripping has to be brush weather stripping because it has to go by, swing through it, at one point or another. And so then you get to something has to be the worst part of the house. Are we just going to let this happen, or is this going to be something that we push back on, or is there another architectural choice that could be sufficient enough and inspiring enough to replace that?
Do you ever use them, Steve?
No, but I have a project where the husband won't give it up. We're putting a pivot door in.
So you have to pivot.
So we have to pivot, and we will. That's it. It's like when I deal with clients, I express my opinion and I say,
Yeah.
this is my opinion. We can do whatever you want.
You're not going to fall on your sword over this. Yeah.
But just, there's a potential for me to say, I told you so.
So I made a post about that recently, and a whole bunch of people poo-pooed on me for the way I wrote it. And my wife even said, well, me reading it makes it sound like you're being a dick to people. But I always say, like, here's the deal. I have a background in art and architectural design. I will do more of this.
Resume speech.
Yes, it is. I will probably do more of this year than you may your entire life. However, I'm not paying for it. I'm not married to you, and I'm not going to live here. So I'm going to give you my opinion from a professional standpoint. And if you choose not to take it on things that are design or taste, that's fine.
That, maybe this is a topic for another podcast, but
I was just gonna say,
when do you fall on your sword?
Well, here's the thing. I get this one all the time, and it's a pet peeve of mine when dealing with clients, but I can't do much about it. Right? I lay out, we have our meeting, I lay out 3 floor plans, and we talk about it, and then like meeting 2, the homeowner comes with their drawn plan. And then
from their hip pocket.
And then I have my revised plan or whatever, and then the client looks at me and says, what do you think? The hell do you mean, what do I think? If I liked the way you laid it out, I would be proposing a floor plan that looks similar to yours. I think yours is a dumb idea, so that's why I drew it this way. So
how hard do you want me to dope slap you?
Right. So what do I think? I think if I were to do it, I would do it in the plan that I showed you, not the plan you're showing me. So I don't know why you hired me and why are you asking this idiotic question. But
it's kind of a key moment, isn't it? When
it is, and that's what I want to say, and I can say it here because I'm not sitting across from the client.
Yeah, that's got to be hard.
Diplomatic, but I get that all the time. Well, so what do you think? Well, I got everything I think is on the paper in front of you. Okay, that's why I drew that. I don't have some master brain idea that I'm holding on to that I'm going to show you a little later, maybe.
You never say, "Oh, I wish I had thought of that."
Yeah,
I assume you know that.
It's unbelievable.
And I think the clients, for the most part, are well-meaning. They're not attempting to be insulting.
No, they're just trying to figure out the process. But it's like if I go to the doctor.
And go, hey, I ran these tests on myself.
I said you wanted me to be on this medicine, but I found this stuff here. What do you think? He's going to look at me and say, wait, you retarded? It's like, that's the prescription you should be having for this. I don't care what you're doing. It's like...
Now we got him riled up.
That was great.
It's the same thing for me when people say, well, if I had more time, I could do this myself. And I'm just like, no, you can't. You might think you can.
Yeah, welcome to it. Welcome to it.
Everybody says, it's easy to design a house. Well, I did some preliminary layouts. Oh, boy, I can't wait to see these.
I wonder how many of our clients listen to this and how many of them are going to bring this up now.
So I feel a little bit sort of out of the loop here. I'm going to do my recommendation, which has nothing to do with what you guys go through. But I wrote a blog on Triple Point Hardware. I think it's kind of a cool one. It's some wing nut testing.
Photos.
You did. Actually, you really came through big time on that blog.
You know what the downfall of Triple Point Hardware is, though? My kids will open it. They lift the handle up, and then they go to shut the door.
Goodness. Yeah.
Ram into the
jam.
casing.
Yeah, there's got to be something for that.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I do have a really cool... I have 2 cool stories about doors before we wrap up.
I'll be the judge. Go ahead.
So, one, on a passive house we did. The house was so tight, and the house was adjacent to a screen-in porch. And the screen-in porch was probably still better than it's a sun porch, not a screen porch.
Right.
And the house was at like 0.4-ish. The screen-in porch,
ACH 50 and airtightness.
The screen-in porch was probably way less than 1. It was probably in like a 0.7-ish range. Well, you can go to their house, and I can grab the door and try to slam it. And I'll throw it. It'll go to about 3 inches,
bounce.
And it'll stop, and it'll bounce back.
Yeah.
Because the sunroom can't lose air fast
enough
than that door is closing. So you can't slam the door. It's actually
The garage.
It'd be
the
neat.
garage at my house does that. The
It'd be
garage
neat to
door
have
is tough.
hook up a digital pressure gauge and see just how much pressure is created there.
is
Yeah.
closing. And then the one we didn't talk about was the one that you brought up just before we were doing this, and I totally forgot about it. But my first passive house, I called it the mini vestibule. Right at the time when we were doing this is like 2010 when I did my first passive house. We were having a hard time trying to find like a real front door that could meet passive house standards, and they were strict. People were trying to figure out the calculations, all of that.
Yeah.
So what we did was we had the window company make a patio door in the likeness of their windows. So it was a triple glazed, well air sealed, etc. And we did a double wall system on the house. So we did a standard Therma-Tru door on the inside wall, and on the exterior wall we had the window, the door from the window company that was made to match all the windows. So you had this like 14-inch vestibule in between the doors that worked out really, really well.
And was that in part because they wanted to keep, was it the full light exterior door and they wanted to be able to leave
that? They just wanted kind of the front door look. They didn't want that door, so we made it look more like a storm door.
Yeah.
It was just a very efficient storm door.
You got to be careful if it's a full light on the outside in terms of what kind of sunlight could cook that space in between.
We didn't paint the door black or anything because we would have cooked that space. But that was another system where I remember you can't slam
you can't
the
close
inside door because you can't move the air out of that interstitial space fast enough. So
cool.
Anyways.
And we already
We already did the Pete's Resource, so we're ready to rock and roll. We're going to make our exit on our door topic.
Man, you're so proud of yourself when he does that.
Don't let it hit you in the
On the way out. Thanks very much for watching. Jake's going to run you through the social media aspect of Unbuild It Podcast.
Because Peter doesn't know what to say. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. Hit the little on the YouTube. Don't hit the little bell so that you get a notification every time. I'm putting my hand in front of Peter again. And then leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. And we keep forgetting to mention questions at unbuilditpodcast.com if you have questions or comments that are not appropriate to leave on YouTube.
We've are building up quite the video library on the YouTube channel.
Yep.
So don't only go there and look for the podcast. Look for Pete's wing nut testing stuff. Jake and I, we have the Before the Build series where I'm talking about the Hilltop Arrow project, all the design and development of construction drawings, etc. So
Every Tuesday, every Thursday, there's new content.
yep.
Have a good day.
Take care, everybody.